Girivardhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vonachari Jamuna Tirvana Chari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivajkacharistira Sata Shri Srimad Jidandi Goswami Shilesi Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivajkacharistira Sata Shri Srimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Govinath Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Grantharaj Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 9th canto, 18th chapter, texts 50 and 51. And I believe 51 is what's on the board, right? Yes. So, okay. So I'll just read text 50 and then we'll chant together text 51. Tameva hridis vinyasya vasudevam guhashayam narayanam aniyam sham nirasira yajat prabhu. Translation. Without material desires, Maharaj Yayati worshipped the Supreme Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart as Narayan and is invisible to material eyes, although existing everywhere. The short purport by Srila Prabhupada. King Yayati, although externally seeming very fond of material enjoyment, was internally thinking of becoming an eternal servant of the Lord. So text 51 we can chant together. Evam varsha sahasrani mana sashtair mana sukham vidadanopi natpripyat sarvabhoma kadindrayai evam varsha sahasrani Manasastair manasukam Viradanopi natpripyat Sarvabhoma kadindriyai Evam varsha sahasrani Manasastair manasukam Vidadhanopi natripyat Sarvabhoma kadindriyai. Others? Evam varsha sahasrani Ladies? Okay. Evam, in this way, Varsha Sahasrani, for 1,000 years, Manasashtai, by the mind and 5 knowledge-acquiring senses. Mana Sukham, temporary happiness created by the mind. Vidadanaha, executing. Api, although. Na atripyat, could not be satisfied. Sarvabhaumaha, although he was the king of the entire world. Kat indriyai, because of possessing impure senses. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Although Maharaj Yayati was the king of the entire world, and he engaged his mind and 5 senses in enjoying material possessions for 1,000 years, he was unable to be satisfied. Purport. The Khad Indriya, or unpurified senses, can be purified if one engages the senses and the mind in Krishna consciousness. Sarvapadi vimir muktam tat padatvena nirmalam. One must be freed from all designations. When one identifies himself with the material world, his senses are impure. But when one achieves spiritual realization and identifies himself as a servant of the Lord, his senses are purified immediately. Engagement of the purified senses in the service of the Lord is called bhakti. Rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchyate. One may enjoy the senses for many thousands of years, but unless one purifies the senses, one cannot be happy. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 9th canto, 18th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled King Yayati Regains His Youth. Whoa! Oh boy, how many of you here would like to regain their youth? None of you young guys even think about it, but some of us old guys, yeah, it would be nice. Now we just dance while we can, right? The day will come. Hare Krishna. Om Ajnana Timrandasya Gyanandana Shayakaya Chakshunamitam Jaina Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Mukham Karoti Vachalam Bhangavandaya Kirinam Kripa Tamaham Pandeshi Guru Vinataram Shri Chaitanya. Srila Prabhupada quotes a verse here that he quotes very often. In fact, I looked it up. According to Vanipedia, this particular verse Sarvapadi vinirmuktam tatpadatvena nirmalam. Rishikesha, Rishikena, Sevanam, Bhakti Ruchyate. This verse is quoted by Srila Prabhupada 240 times. 238 actually, but anyway. Probably a few more times not recorded. And what's also very interesting is that when he quotes this verse, he also says something that he repeats also very often. Here he says it, and he says it again and again and again. That engaging the purified senses in the service of the Lord is bhakti. Or here he says, bhakti is engaging the purified senses in the service of the Lord. Everywhere, Prabhupada says, what is bhakti? Bhakti is to engage the purified senses in the service of the Lord. Simple. This very compact definition. What is bhakti? Bhakti means to engage our purified senses in the service of the Lord. Now, there's a lot to unpack here. It's a very short, simple sentence, but each word carries immense meaning. The first one that kind of jumps out at us is purified. Purified senses, at least for me, that's the word that really jumps out. Because when I hear this, I say, okay, bhakti is to engage the purified senses. Turn this off. Then I immediately start to think, well, wait a minute. What does this mean, pure and impure senses? Senses are senses, right? I mean, you see or you don't see. You smell or you don't smell. I mean, when we think of our senses, we think about what they do, right? In this verse, Srila Prabhupada talks about the mind and the knowledge-acquiring senses. Of course, we also hear from Bhagavatam that there's not just 5 senses, or 6 when you include the mind. There's also another 5, which they call the working senses. Earlier in this same canto, in the description of Maharaj Ambarish, it describes all of those senses, his working senses, his knowledge-acquiring senses, how he engaged them, and we'll return to that a little later. But when we think of our senses, our seeing, our hearing, these are vehicles through which we perceive the world. Simple. And depending on how we engage those, we get different perceptions. So you might think that, well, the senses simply work. They just do a job. And it depends on what you're contemplating, whether your experience through those senses is pure or impure. If we contemplate things that with the desire to enjoy, then our experience through our senses, we could say, is of a certain character, a certain quality. And when we contemplate and we use or we engage in seeing and hearing things that elevate our consciousness, that
stimulate within us compassion and love and kindness, appreciation, then we could say that that experience is a higher experience. But the senses are simply doing their job in this respect. So what does it mean for the senses to be pure or impure? And what changes? Now, I was researching, studying this, and this verse gives us the hint, because it begins with Sarvapadi Vinirmuktam. When you become in your mind, you begin to free yourself. When you begin to become free of upadi, when you begin to see your identity as spirit, when you begin to see that you are not your body, that you are not those senses, when you begin to see yourself as the pure spirit, conscious, living being, and you begin to see your connection with Krishna as his servant, when you cleanse yourself, then something happens. So, Prabhupada writes in one of the places that he quotes this verse, I didn't quite print it out properly. Okay, anyway. He says we have various senses, the powers of seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, etc. And again he says bhakti means engaging all the senses in the service of the master of the senses. And this is what struck me. He says these material senses, however, cannot be engaged in the service of the Lord. Well, that was interesting. Therefore, one has to become free of designations. So, the first step, becoming free of designation, where's my other paper? Oh. Leads to this. Now, one may inquire that since factually the devotee has the same material existence, how is it possible that the same materialistic eyes become purified by devotional service? As stated by, then he says, as stated by Lord Chaitanya, it is that devotional service cleanses the mirror of the mind. So we were talking about what do the senses do? The senses feed the mind, and it is dependent on our minds how the senses work. In our present state, because our minds are clouded, we're identifying with our bodies. We're motivated by the desire to enjoy various kinds of pleasures connected to the senses. We actually don't see things properly, or hear things properly, or smell things properly. Our senses are impure. meaning that what comes through them is filtered. This is what I came to understand. What is the difference between the pure sense and the impure sense? When the senses are impure, it's like a glass of water. When it is clear and clean, you can see through it. But when it has some dirt mixed in, you cannot see properly. That is impure seeing. The seeing is there, but the experience of what is seen is contaminated. The hearing is there, but the experience of what we hear is polluted. The touch, the taste, all of these experiences, when we are identifying as our material bodies, as the owners of the senses, these are my senses, this is my body, this is my life, this is my experience. When we identify in this way, then all of our experience becomes filtered by those designations, and our perceptions are distorted. Another meaning of impure is distorted, polluted. We have to purify. We have to remove these distortions. And as we do, then these senses will begin to actually see Krishna. They will actually begin to perceive Krishna. Krishna is there. Krishna is everywhere. Krishna is present in everything. But we don't see him, because our senses are filtering that experience. And that pollution, that contamination is sarvopadi. All our identification as the owner and controller. This verse gives us sarvapadi vinirmuktam tat padatvena nirmalam, gives us another very important understanding, because it says rishikesha rishikenam. It gives us the sense that what is this what is this pollution? The pollution is when we do not acknowledge that Krishna is the actual owner, the proprietor. These senses that we think are our senses are not our senses. They're Krishna's senses. They belong to him. They're designed for his service. Krishna wants unlimited varieties of pleasure and enjoyment. So he expands himself in various energies. We are one of those energies. And these senses that we have as an energy, just as we are energies of Krishna, our senses are Krishna's senses. But interacting with him from another relationship of servant to the master. They belong to him. Our bodies belong to him. We have these instances of great devotees so filled with lamentation for not being able to serve the Lord fully. They just want to end their bodies, because of some bodily inconvenience, something the body is doing. What use is this body? Let me get rid of this body. It can't serve Krishna. I want to get rid of it. And in the case of, I think, Sanatana Goswami, isn't it? Mahaprabhu intervened, wait a minute, that body doesn't belong to you. You can't just throw it away thinking it's yours because it belongs to me. And I have some use for that body. But we think we own our bodies, we think we own our senses, and thus our senses become impure. When Prabhupada quotes this verse in Tracy, he says, Bhakti is engaging the purified senses in the service of the Lord. So we have to begin by purifying our senses by this simple but difficult process of sarvapadi vinirmuktam. Now there's another verse that is often quoted in relationship to our senses. Atak Shri Krishna nabadi na bhaved grayam indraye sevun mukhehi jivado swayameva spuratyadaha. So first here in this verse it says, well, you can't see Krishna with your senses. It says Krishna is beyond your senses. Atak Sri Krishna namadi na bhaved grayam indraye. You cannot perceive Krishna. Na bhaved grayam indraye. You cannot. What? Atak Sri Krishna nama adi. Himself, his name, everything. Na bhaved grayam indraye. Not perceivable. You cannot see him. In the previous verse here, it's also stated, Tameva hridya vinyasya vasudevam guhashayam. Guhashayam. Who exists in everyone's heart. Narayanam aniyam sham nirasir ayajat prabhum. Aniyam sham, invisible to material eyes, although existing everywhere. Invisible. You cannot see. You cannot perceive Krishna with your senses. And yet, bhakti is to engage your senses in the service of Krishna and thus perceive Krishna with your senses. And the solution? Sevun mukhehi jivado swayam spuratyadaha. By engaging the senses in serving Krishna, Krishna becomes manifest to our senses. And of course, where does the first sense? Jiva, the tongue. We begin this journey from impure senses to purified senses, to senses from the position of senses engaged in false identities, to senses engaged in true identity. We begin this journey, we begin this path through our tongues. In two ways. by vibrating the transcendental name of Krishna and tasting Krishna's prasadam. Bhakti is so wonderful a process. In other yoga systems, there is a progression of work one has to undergo. Yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyahara, etc. There is various steps of gradual elevation of consciousness to achieve a certain level of awareness. But in the process of bhakti, the means and the goal are one. Our goal is to purify our senses, to achieve that level of sense activity where there is no contamination. And engage those purified senses in the service of Krishna. So what do? We can say, well, wait, my senses are not pure. I have so many misconceptions, so what do I do now? Sevan mukhehi jivado. Go ahead, engage those senses, engage them in Krishna's service, and they will become purified. This is the wonderful power of Bhakti Yoga. So we mentioned earlier, how do we do this? And we talked about Maharaj Ambarish. And I thought it would be nice to revisit how he did this. Famous verse begins, Savai mana Krishna padara vindayor vachamsi vaikunta gunanu varnane karo harer mandira marjanadishu shutim chakararachuta satkatoda ye Mukunda lingalaya darshane drishau tadbritya gatra sparshenga sangamam granam chatat pada saruja sorabe Srimad Tullasya rasanam tadarpite padau hare ketra padanu sarpane shiro rishikesha pavdabi vandane kamam chadasyena tukama kamyaya yatotama shloka janasraya rati. Maharaj Ambarish exemplifies the complete engagement of the purified senses. Maharaj Ambarish always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna, his words in describing the glories of the Lord. And as we said, that we have the knowledge senses and the working senses, so now we get one of the working senses. His hands in cleansing the Lord's temple, and his ears in hearing the words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna. He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity of Krishna, Krishna's temples, and Krishna's places like Mathura and Vrindavan. He engaged his sense of touch in touching the bodies of the Lord's devotees. He engaged his sense of smell in smelling the fragrance of tulsi offered to the Lord. And he engaged his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasad. He engaged his legs in walking. He didn't take a motorcycle, by the way. No scooters for Maharaj Ambarish. Sometimes I get a little upset. I mean, I shouldn't. When I see someone, I live over in the Grihastha area, and I see someone hop on a big, powerful motorcycle to come from the Grihastha area to the temple, and I said, why do you have to do that? It's so much nicer to engage the legs. And if you have a bicycle, you know, that's an extension of your legs, right? But motorcycles, we can. Of course, some people, you live too far away. I understand. I'm not, but when possible, you know, walk to the holy places and walk on pilgrimage. Come on parikrama. His head in bowing down before the Lord, and all his desires in serving the Lord 24 hours a day. Indeed, Maharaj Ambarish never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He engaged all his senses in devotional service, in various engagements related to the Lord. This is the way to increase attachment for the Lord and be completely free from all material desires. We have our bodies, our senses, our minds. And we have the examples here of all the great devotees, how they engage them, how they became pure, and how ultimately those same senses revealed to them the Supreme Personality of Godhead in all his beauty, all his sweetness, all his love. So we go forward, beginning with the tongue, chanting the holy names of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Giving up our false identities, vibrating the name, hearing the name, engaging our minds in the name, simply for the service of the name. And that way become pure. So we have a little more time. I'll end here. And we can have more discussion, comments, questions. Yes, yes. Oh. Rajendranandana, give him the microphone, please.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Pancaratna Prabhu. I knew you had some nectar to share.
Hare Krishna.
We engage this body and mind, the material body and mind, under the direction of the spiritual master in acts of devotion. And as such, they can become purified and be called purified senses. At the same time, are you accommodating that there's a difference between spiritualized senses and spiritual senses?
Senses are very interesting things because you have the physical senses in the material body, the eyes, the ears, and we know that they function based on the material energy. If I, this is a good example right here.
And that was most of the focus of your class and what you're saying right now.
So there's a difference between my material eyes and my sense of sight that takes place in the mind. So on the material level, there is a realm of material sense. And then there's spiritual senses. There's spiritual bodies. And there's spiritualized senses. There's material senses which have become purified. And I think as we go forward, at least it's been my experience, and I think most of you must have also had some experience, that, you're going along, especially in our chanting, right? We're chanting, and we're hearing. I mean, we hear the mantra, but we're not hearing. We're just, the physical act of hearing is going on. And there's a certain perception that there's a sound being made by my tongue and it's coming into my ear, and there's a certain, but my mind is somewhere else. And I'm not focused, I'm not paying attention to the sound, actual sound vibration. And so my experience of the name is it might as well be perhaps some mumbling. Prabhupada talks about that. Sometimes it actually becomes mumbling. The sound is there, but I'm not seeing Krishna. And if I start to pay attention, I'm sure all of you have had this experience. It's suddenly or gradually or whatever, I find myself actually hearing the mantra. And now it's a totally different experience. Same sounds, same thing, but now I feel Krishna's presence is there. So the sense that material sense has become spiritualized, and Krishna is beginning to be revealed. Now, within our quality, our nature, our existence as jiva tattva, we have a spiritual body, and we have spiritual senses that go with those bodies. We haven't realized that yet. But qualitatively, our material senses, when they become purified and they become engaged, they act like spiritual senses. They become spiritualized. Now, is there some point at which our real spiritual senses, the ones that go on past this body, begin to awaken? I understand, yes. And those senses begin to bring us into realms that at least I have no experience of, but we hear about. We hear about the Goswamis. We hear about other great acharyas. We've seen, or we've heard, I never saw personally Srila Prabhupada enter into his trance-like states, where he became, we could at least, it appeared to us, he never spoke of it that I know of. Although we just read yesterday where he was in a kirtan in, I think it was Conway Hall. Yes, Jamuna was describing. So Prabhupada was in London in Conway Hall, and Jamuna was leading the kirtan. And she was singing, and all of a sudden, Srila Prabhupada started singing, Narada Muni Bhajare Vina, Radhika Ramana Namane. He started, and Jamuna was a little confused. And should I stop here? And so, Prabhupada was going to, but Prabhupada indicated, no, keep going, keep going. And he kept singing, and she was singing Hare Krishna, and he was singing Narada Muni, and there was this thing going on. And then he stopped, and she kept singing, and then later on she was asked, well, Prabhupada, what was that? So you didn't see? You didn't see? Narada Muni was there. I think that were spiritual senses.
Yeah.
I think those were spiritual senses.
Definitely.
And so, yes, at some point, spiritual senses awaken. And we start to see things that we don't see now. That day will come. That day will come. Hare Krishna. Does that answer your question?
I really said it as a preparatory introduction because can I share just a little more on the side of the spiritualized senses? It's in the purport. It's like you say, very deep, packed with so much meaning. When one identifies himself with the material world, his senses are impure. So as long as we're affected by the bodily consciousness, even in Vaidhi Bhakti, then the senses still have some purification to go. And as long as that's there, then one will not be able to chant the holy names purely. Krishna will not manifest through his name. You'll not realize that the name is non-different from Krishna. You won't see the deities as Krishna actually dancing with Srimati Radharani. Those are all things you don't see with the material senses, but with the spiritual senses. But if you continue in the process of Vaidhi Bhakti under the direction of the spiritual master, he will bless you. Those blessings give one the realization. We all, from day one, talk we're not the body and we're the eternal servant of Krishna, but there's a difference between the Gyan and the Vigyan. So that's the next sentence of the purport. But when one achieves spiritual realization, that's the realization of eternality, that your spirit soul, and continue to engage. At that point, you can chant the Shuddhanam. And if you continue to engage in the process that the spiritual master has taught us, has given us, then the levels of purification take place. From that nishta, liberated pure chanting, one will develop some taste and one develops emotion. And simultaneously, from the realization of eternality, the spiritual identity begins to manifest. In Bhava Bhakti, they talk about that's when one can realize one's spiritual body and spiritual relationship with the Lord. On that level, as you, on the spiritual platform, are chanting and serving, simultaneously using your purified, spiritualized senses externally, like Prabhupada would do in front of us every day. Simultaneously, internally on the spiritual platform, these spiritual senses have become realized. They're a reality. They've been given, uncovered. And that's when one can see Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is such an Ananda form. And at some point, when that bhav turns to prema, then one is qualified to actually serve, personally serve the Supreme Lord. And there's a purport Jananivas Prabhu has pointed out and likes to say that it's in Bhagavad Gita where the medium of devotional service to the Lord will always be through the process of serving the Lord will always be through the transparent medium of the spiritual master, but it becomes, simultaneously, it can become and becomes a personal one-on-one with Krishna. So on the spiritual platform with spiritual senses, spiritual mind, spiritual identity, body, etc., that's what we're really looking for. If we want to say what the goal of what we're doing now is, it's Krishna Prema, and that's what manifests in that level. So I just thought I'd put some discussion elaborating on the spiritual senses that can come as a result of engaging the purified senses.
Yes, the senses that see Krishna. Primanjana charita bhakti vilochanena. The senses, the eyes that are anointed with the salve of love, perceive Govinda. Any other comments, questions? Otherwise we can... Thank you. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.